I want to understand from your perspective as a longevity physician, coach, doctor.
Yeah.
What is driving this global obsession of living longer? Is it the fear of death? Is it, the desire to create an impact? Or is it just, curiosity?
I think it's multifactorial. I'd written an article about 5-6 years ago where I spoke about well-being becoming the new religion. In many ways, life is changing so fast because of technology. It's connecting us, but it's also making us lonely and isolated at the same time. People are desperately searching for a sense of community, searching for a sense of purpose, searching for a sense of belonging. And we're also reaching phases of sort of human societal evolution where some of the basics are being taken care of. And younger people today can start to think about, okay, what is more important to me in my life and how do I want to shape that life going forward? So I think that alongside the pandemic, where suddenly globally there was a moment where everyone on earth viewed health as his or her strongest competitive advantage, and having to think about what are the things that will make me more competitive, i.e. healthier over a period of time. I think these are some of the things that I see which have sort of come together, coalesced together, which are making people now sort of sit up and think about, okay, what does a good life mean? How do I live better? How do I avoid frailty in the way I see it in my parents or my grandparents before them? And what are the changes that I can make using technology and some of the latest science to be part of that journey? So that's sort of how these things I see it is coming together. Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't think anyone will debate if you ask this question that do you want to live long? I think 99 out of 100 people will say yes.
It's interesting. It really depends on how you define long. And I'll share with you a couple of examples, right? Every time I get in front of a group of people in, with a corporate talk or an audience, I often ask the question, who would like to live to be, let's say, 60, 70, 80, 90? And I notice that the older that number becomes, fewer and fewer hands stay raised. They start to come down. And then a natural follow-up question is, why did you then drop your hand? And they reply, well, I don't live in disease. I've seen, the suffering and all of those things. So I think there's one track which we need to address off the bat, which is when we talk about living long, we don't just mean in a state of old health like we see today, which is one with disease and sickness. Hopefully through this conversation, we can talk about how do we live healthier for longer, right? And what does that mean? So I think that's one piece for sure. The other is longevity is very relative. If we were doing this podcast in the late 1800s, a person who was considered to be old would be probably someone who's younger. I don't know your age, but certainly much younger than I am, where global life expectancy was
about 40.
Yeah, exactly, right? Late 30s, 40s. Then the World War came, we saw the advent of antibiotics, and that pushed it along further. 1960s, 1970s, generic medications, so some of the communicable or non-communicable diseases were also being addressed. So this term longevity continuously gets pushed further and further out. And where we are today versus 1960, and I know the numbers because McKinsey had done a research study around this globally, they found that since 1960 to 2019, just before the pandemic, which created a slight drag on the average life expectancy, over the world, we saw a 19-year addition to the global life expectancy.
And why was that?
Primarily because of generic medicines, better surgical techniques, and the single biggest factor was that China, India, and some parts of sub-Saharan Africa raised the people out of the poverty line. So infant mortality went down and maternal mortality also went down. So that added a lot. But since then, and certainly if you talk to scientists in the field, there's a big question mark, which is there truly a finite limit to human life expectancy, which might be 120 to 122, because that's the longest known humans that we know, at least documented and credible? Or is there a possibility through technology, biotechnology, engineering, all this stuff we'll go into, where that number could potentially be pushed out further? Right now, the consensus is very much divided. And I'm certainly in the camp of that we seem to have a finite limit. Let's enjoy that limit. Let's make sure it's as healthy for as long as possible, but then allow the next generation to then take over from there, right? So that's sort of my framework.
So tell me one thing. This whole thing came about became famous is when from the West, a few people have started experimenting on themselves. For example, Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
They come down to India also. And even though I don't completely agree to his views
Yeah.
because they do not uh, address the Indian way of living.
Yeah.
So his is more on the United States front, and plus also he has all the resources in the world where he's taking thousands of pills. He's having machines made for him specifically
Yeah.
to kind of regenerate his cells and skin and the works.
Yeah.
But when you come to India, like what he addressed, I kind of agree with, because we as Indians, when we look at longevity and living healthier and living a longer, healthier life, a lot of things are not in our control because we still are struggling at least in our metropolitans and tier one cities
Yeah.
with air quality.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is very important because I know I kind of complain about it.
Sure.
Our sanitation, our hygiene, and everything. All of these things also
Yeah.
will add up
Yeah.
to how healthy and long.
Yes.
And these are something which is not in your control.
Yeah.
So how do you view that from the Indian perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. So
First of all, do you agree with Brian Johnson's takes on everything? I want to know about that first.
okay, I have had the chance to spend time with him over the last few years that he's been doing things. We've interacted at some conferences and events that he's done. I've certainly been looking closely at what he's trying to do in terms of a blueprint protocol. And I think there is this group of, let's call them Silicon Valley tech bros, like Peter Diamandis, like Tony Robbins, obviously Brian, folks like that, who are trying to solve for lifespan. Brian openly wears on his T-shirt, "Don't die." Right. So for him, success is that he believes, to some degree, I imagine, or at least convincingly speaks about the fact that he thinks that humans have reached the generation where potentially we don't need to ever die again. And there's a sense of immortality that can potentially exist. I'm not in that camp.
Thank you for saying that.
Right. I think that there is actually an evolutionary or design, which a reason why we do die. It allows for fresh ideas. It allows for freshness in nature. It allows for survival of the fittest and the best and a certain degree of progression through that. And I think, therefore, that it's better for us humans to consider the fact that we have the 10 years odd, depending on how lucky we are with certain things. And we can talk about genetics as well. But what do we do to ensure that that's maximally enhanced to our benefit? That cognitively we enjoy the silver years, that our physical bodies allow us to be self-dependent, that we can be a contributing member of society financially, economically, and ideologically as well into our 8th and 9th decade and beyond. So that's certainly the quest that I'm trying to live my life and how I design for the life that my wife and my family and all that we live at home, and in the patients and clients that I care for as well. But to answer your question directly, this was a question posed a few years ago where is it nature, i.e. your genes, or is it nurture? Is it the choices you make, like the environment that you just described? And what this data is suggestive of is that around 14, 16, 18% potentially comes through your genetic makeup. The rest is because of three things. Number one, where you live. Number two, the people you spend time with. And number three, the lifestyle choices you make. And it's actually in that order as well.
Okay.
So where you live will dictate the quality of air, the quality of water, the sound, the environmental stress levels, the exposure to toxins, the food you consume. All of those things have a huge, big role to play on the human body. We are part of the biosphere. Everything that we do impacts it, and vice versa. And potentially climate change might enter this conversation. It's certainly something that I'm very passionate about because there's a massive shift which is going to happen in the next 2-3 decades, which will influence human longevity as well. The second is who you spend time with. You are more likely to be divorced if someone in your immediate circle is also divorced. You are more likely to be obese if someone in your immediate circle is also obese. You're more likely to be a runner or play pickleball if someone in your friend circle is a runner or a pickleball. It's human tendency. We are social apes. We tend to mirror and conform to the tribe around us, and normalization of certain sort of choices in life happens as well. So it's true, you are the sum of the five people you spend time with. And often people ask me, okay, doc, I want to run a marathon, or I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I tell them, well, just find someone who does that and become friends with that individual. And you're more likely to then take on those behaviors as well. And the last is therefore the choices you make, which is a direct linkage to the people you spend time with. So we can therefore assume that around 80% of your probability of living to be 90 years is down to those three aspects. And therefore, you and everyone watching this are in much more power and control than you understand or appreciate. It's not about, these are my genes, my parents were diabetic, therefore I'll become diabetic. No, you have the ability to change that, but it's a trajectory. And the earlier you start investing in yourself, the better.